Hello, guys. It is the Neutral Zone Trap podcast, and this is Lloyd D'Souza. We're just recording this on the eve, or rather, the day of the trade deadline. Lots of trades have passed by, so today is going to be our NHL Trade Deadline special. I have the usual guests, Sujeevan and Sandeep, and we have a special guest today, Chris Greenway. May you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, if the background doesn't give it away already, less of a sports fan and more of an Avalanche fan specifically. So, I'm happy to talk about that tonight and throw my 2 cents and otherwise, yeah, we're looking forward to hanging out with you guys tonight. And thanks for having me.
Definitely, definitely. Yes, been looking forward to having you, especially. I wanted to get you. I know at the beginning of the year we had talked a little bit about the abs, so it'd be good to get your input on that for sure. But let's get started. I know. See, here's the thing. Even though I'm a Kings fan, you're an Avs fan. We got the two Leafs fans here, so they're gonna get the first crack at the first subject because all of us are from Toronto anyways. So and probably most of the people, the 10 people who are going to listen to this podcast are from Toronto. Just kidding. Let's get started. So Mike Folino, that was the big trade today, guys. I'll start off.
Nick Foligno, by the way.
Nick. Mike was the father.
Mike played about like 20 years ago.
30 years ago. But it's funny because I did see a video of him scoring that famous goal, game 5 winner against the Red Wings back in 93, and he did the big Mike Folino jump celebration. So what if I would ask you, Sajeevan, what are the odds he'll do this, his son is going to do that celebration on his first goal?
I don't know if he'll do the exact same thing. I think he's a different type of player. Nick Foligno's been known to be more of like the impact player in terms of other things. So I don't know if he'll have the same celebration. It will be nice to see it, but I don't think you're going to see that.
Well, I guess it will depend on which lines he'll be playing rather. I mean, I would imagine Sandeep, that's going to be what, third line?
Well, I think Keith is, based on his press conference today, I think it's really open. I think it's a lot of juggling around during practice and trying to figure it out. I mean, just to Sujeevan's point, he doesn't really perform on the stat sheets in terms of goals and assists. He's more of that guy that brings the leadership quality into the room. You already have a team full of leaders based on past captains, alternate captains. So you're bringing in the quality of leadership and grit, which is something that you really need in a deep playoff run. And an added bonus is he also brings that playoff experience that's needed. Where I'd love to see him slot in is third line, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of be in that second line with the Tavares as well.
But here's the thing, guys. I'm going to ask you all straight up. First round pick was given in return. Was that steep? Or
No.
rather, too steep?
Not at all.
No. And that's not a biased Leafs opinion. I think you have to understand and evaluate where your situation is at the moment. I mean, you are leading the division. You're in a special division where the circumstances and the structure of the playoff format have changed slightly. And you want to go all in. I mean, this is your chance. The team's doing well. They're performing really hot. So you might as well take that gamble and go in it. And keep in mind, it's going to probably be a pick between 25 to 30 at most. So I don't think it's really that much of a risk.
But like but if you have to compare it to some other trades and the other big fish of the day, Taylor Hall, they didn't even have to trade. Bruins didn't have to even trade a first rounder for him. So it was but I think it was also two different types of players. You got like a skill player in Taylor Hall, who's like, I guess the demand for skill players wasn't there this time around, more so than the demand for more gritty third line, fourth line players like that. But yeah, no, I like that was I'll say one thing about that trade though. The Leafs got who they wanted. They wanted Nick Foligno, and they got him. I mean, say all you want about that price, they got their man. And I think that's something I see, which is a common theme of Kyle Dubas. He wants, he has a particular player in mind, and he goes and he gets that exact same player. A couple smaller moves actually that happened. What's his name? The defenseman from Anaheim, Hutton. So, any thoughts on him, Sandeep or Sujeevan? I'll let you guys take it from here.
I think Hutton was just more of like a depth defenseman ad, which doesn't hurt us much. We have our core four that we're going to run with. Riley, Muzzin, Brody, and Hall, who stepped up, are going to be probably the four. And then Hutton will just be the guy that's there for the depth. Bogosian's been playing well. So I don't think it's that big of an impact kind of move. They wanted to add more depth to their defense, and I think they did that. Um, but I think the Rittich move is more of a significant thing for the Leafs, bringing more depth goaltending, and I think Sandeep was saying off air how it's
Well,
showing that. Yeah, go ahead.
because I
No,
want to
it was
ask
just
Sandeep something about that Redditch trade. Does that is that a huge like foreboding thing as it pertains to Frederick Anderson? And because many people say that he's been put on long-term injury reserve, that it's much more significant. He may not come back, and Campbell Soup will be the starting goalie. So I want to ask you, Sandeep, what is your opinion on that?
There's a lot to speak on this matter, but I think the Leafs knew of Anderson's situation, and it's something that was just kept under wraps, and it wasn't really exposed to the media as much as the media in Toronto loves digging holes and digging deep into their players. But I think Anderson's really hurt, and I think the management's done a good job of kind of keeping it under wraps in terms of keeping it a secret. But I don't factor out him potentially being available in the playoffs. And I think that's something that Dubas and Keefe have mentioned in their press conference as well. This doesn't necessarily mean that he's out of the picture just yet. He could be a factor in the playoffs because keep in mind that the long-term injury reserve cap, it doesn't become effective. As long as he's eligible for the playoffs, they don't have to worry about cap issues. It's only if he gets taken off the LTIR before the season ends is when it becomes an issue. In terms of long term, I don't see Freddie in their plans. I think it's going to be, I was telling Sujeevan this as well, it's going to be a 1A, 1B situation. So I think it's going to be a Jack Campbell, and they're going to look at the goalie market in the offseason, whether it be via a trade or a free agent signing, and kind of have that Rask and Halak tandem that you saw the Bruins run with. And I think
Yeah,
they're going
yeah,
to just allocate their money towards other needs too. So I think right now I'm
yeah.
going to say no. I think this Rittich thing is just another depth move in the event that Freddie can't go come playoff time as well.
Plus, plus winning 10 straight games as a starter for the Leafs. It
11.
Hey,
does
he's a
help him.
former King, so he's doing something that he couldn't do on the King. So I'll take that.
It was
And
so
that's
funny,
and
man. Like about that, like for the longest time, the Kings had like the worst goalies. I mean, I remember that there was a time when we had a Japanese dude in net. I can't remember all the names. I mean, La Barbara, Jesus,
But you gotta keep in mind Campbell never really got that development because Jonathan Quick was so damn good. Like Quick was
basically.
amazing for you guys, so he never got that
yeah,
chance.
and you never got injured like that, right?
No, he
But
never
that's
did.
that was my worry as well when the Leafs got Campbell, because we had a situation with the former King goalie who didn't turn out to be this big time player that everyone said he was,
Yeah, Bernier.
Jonathan Bernier. So that was my only concern, and I'm still not like I love Jack Campbell. I think he's a great goalie, but I don't know if he's a starter yet. And to go on to Sandy's point, I think the Leafs knew what was going to happen with Freddie in terms of this season. And to be honest, if you look at it, it's a very hard season this year with the number of games you play in a week. Um, Bringing Freddie back for what's left of the season is not worth it. They
Yeah.
rather go to the playoffs, which is more spaced out, and they have Freddie and Jack Campbell, who's like probably one of the best 1A and 1B option in the league.
Well, let's move on to the next topic, which will be about our Canadian teams. But quickly, I just want to ask you just your quick assessment, Dubas's performance. What grade would you give it?
I'm giving an A+.
What about you, Sandy?
Can't be too biased. I gotta give him. I'll give him an A. I'll just give him an A, just because I think the fact that he didn't give up prospects and he only gave up picks, and the way they flexed that cap, I gotta give him an A for that. Just
Like
purely
I'm
based
giving,
on the cap.
I'm giving him an A+ because everyone before the trade deadline, they're like the Leafs don't have any room whatsoever. He finessed Columbus to take 50% of Nick Foligno's contract and 25% with the Sharks. So they're only paying 25% of Nick Foligno's contract. Same thing with Rittich. And you still have Nick Robertson, you still have Sandin, you have Liljegren, and you just don't have a first round pick. And you added a forward that you needed, a depth D and a depth goalie. So that's why I'm giving it an A+.
Hmm. We'll have to see about that. But let's move on to some of the other Canadian teams. We got all teams were rather active. I don't know about the Sens, but I know the Canadians they added Eric Gustafson to their decor. The Flames had traded away Sam Bennett. I know he'd been asking for a trade throughout the whole season, and that happened. Plus, we have the Jets. Yeah, the Jets had made their move for Yordi Ben. They were on the lookout for a D man, and I guess they looked at him as being that person. But yeah, any trades that stick out for you guys?
For me, I think the things that the Canadians did was it wasn't blockbuster moves, but it was good moves. I think first earlier they brought in Eric Stahl. The move that I really like is John Merrill, who they brought in, who's a very good depth defenseman, and he adds on to that Canadians lineup. And then on top, as you said, they um, enhance their defense with Gustafson as well. So they didn't give up much. They made small moves that mean a lot more in terms of depth and adding to their team. I think those are the moves that stood up. Otherwise, like the Canadian teams didn't make a big splash, if I would say.
Anything? Yeah. No, what about you, Sandy? Any one
Just with the
particular
Habs,
trade?
I think that it wasn't specifically a deadline move, but the move to get Eric Stahl, I thought was a great move for a Canadians team that needed some veteran leadership. I think it's a team where you look at that Habs roster, and I think even prior to the season beginning, you're like, is this even a playoff team? Just because they don't really have big name stars. This team that Mark Bergevin assembled is just a bunch of young kids, some scrappy guys that just find a way to win. I mean, they have Carey Price as probably one of the best goalies in the NHL, but they just find a way to just grind it out and win those games. And you saw that tonight with their win over the Leafs. But I think Eric Stahl's that perfect fit for them to kind of guide those young guys in their core as well. So I think to Jeevan's point, I think Canadians did the right moves to make their team better.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, for me, I don't think I really saw a move that really moved the needle per se, but I really liked that Gustafson trade. I thought that, this is a player who had a good season of just a couple seasons ago with Philly. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe he could recreate his ways. Let's talk about some trades too that happened south of the border, and this is where I guess we have Chris come in here. So Soderbergh to the Avs. How do you like that move?
Well, I like that move a lot. I mean, so the third C position. So Tyson Jost has been taking that role for the Avalanche at this point. So you can imagine the Avalanche are stacked at center. We have Nathan McKinnon, obviously, as the best, even better than McDavid as the top center in the NHL. And then we have number two center, which is Kadri. Excellent, right? But then that number three center has always kind of plagued them these past few months and this season, and really solidifying that 3C role in Carl Soderberg, who they already had before for multiple seasons. They retain him. I think that's a great move for depth. I mean, so relying on Tyson Jost might have been a great thing, but I mean, you guys all know how this playoffs is going to be with injuries and things that happen, and solidifying that depth, I think, is really important. I mean,
Yeah,
personally, wouldn't have minded Paul Stastny or something, but I mean, like, yeah, Soderberg is a familiar face, and I'm very happy to have him back.
definitely, definitely. I remember
And
y'all
he also
traded
knows
him.
the abs culture too, right? Which is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Um, I just don't understand why they didn't keep him the first time, right?
Yeah,
Like
they traded him to
letting him.
Boston, right? So I remember him back then, and it was a very good depth move for Boston. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and that was But I also want to ask though, like, since now you're on, I wanted to ask you about the Avs, just quick times. I know the Grubauer's having a good season behind the pipes, but do you still trust him as your starting goalie?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think it's not about trusting Grubauer to play. It's whether we trust Grubauer to be able to play. The past 2 seasons of the playoffs, the Avalanche have been destroyed by goaltender injuries. I mean, the Avalanche were eliminated last year because they had Hutchinson and that as their as their main goalie in the playoffs. And then the year before that, they had the Hamburglar as their goalie in net. That was in their elimination game. So with Grubauer, there's much confidence, and now picking up Devin Dubnik, which as an Avalanche fan is a choice acquisition. There's a history there with the Wild there, but I think it's not so much about whether or not he will be good, but whether or not he'll be able to maintain his health, and solidifying that goaltender depth is great as well with the Dubnik acquisition.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, it'll be you guys Vegas battling it out. I'm pretty sure in that division. Used to be my team back in the day, but those days are long gone. Yeah, we traded away Jeff Carter today. That was pretty interesting. I felt so sad because that's like one less person from the championship team back in 2014. Now all that's left is what Dustin Brown, Kopitar, Dowdy, Quick. That's about it. So yeah, Jeff Carter to the Penguins today. Nice depth move for them, and I guess it would probably be like Jeff Carter's one of his last times. It's crazy to think about it. I remember seeing him. It wasn't that long ago he started his career, and now he's already 36 years old, and it's probably one of his last chances at a Stanley Cup.
Slot
Um,
him in with Crosby, and he gets 20 goals automatically.
But one thing
He,
I've got to say about Jeff Carter, I never thought he would be playing for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I never thought that. I mean,
sure.
as a Philadelphia Flyer, like, and he's like, when I think of the Flyers, I definitely think about Jeff Carter. I just never thought I would see him in a Penguins jersey, but yeah. And another big move, the Taylor Hall move from the Bruins getting him for little to nothing. I mean, no first round pick, just a second round pick. Uh was this one of the bigger highway robberies? I gotta start with you, Sandeep, on this one. What do you think?
I don't want to say absolutely, but I was shocked by the return. I think everyone could agree with me on this call as well. I think the fact that there was not even a prospect or a first round pick, whether it be in 2022 or 2023 attached to this, was just highway robbery. I don't know what the Sabres were thinking. That franchise is just, I don't know, they're they're burning. That franchise is just in shambles. I don't know where they're going in terms of direction, what their future holds ahead for them. I think a lot of Sabres fans are thinking the same thing. They want to burn their jersey. They absolutely have no loyalty to this organization. it's just
Yeah.
a mind-boggling move. I don't know what to think of
And
it. I
plus,
think,
and this doesn't help with Jack Eichel, because this is a player that has clearly shown in the past he doesn't want to be there. He's fed up of
and
losing, and it's just another
and
lose
it doesn't
lost season.
help. It doesn't help their case either, because if you're looking at shopping Jack Eichel, Eichel wants out. You're already reducing the asking price because teams are going to look at the Sabres and not really have that respect. You're going to look at that organization and say, well, you only gave up Taylor Hall and got a second round pick. So we only want to give up one first round pick and maybe a prospect for Jack Eichel when the asking price should be much more.
Man,
Uh, I don't know.
somewhere Rick Jenneret is rolling in his grave. So is Dominic Hasek over
I mean,
there. Yeah, I mean,
I
I
mean,
don't know
I'd
what.
love to hear what everyone else thinks, but
Yeah,
that
yeah. I
was
mean,
just a
anybody
rubber in
chime
my
in,
eyes.
Chris? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. Like, so I know that the Avs, at least in the off season, were in on the Tyler Hall sweepstakes, and are they going to get him or not? And it turns like, I mean, it seemed that he selected just the greatest money contract. So like, let's just go to Buffalo. Like, obviously, I'm not going to win anything there, but look, they're able to pay me the amount that they can. And the trade, look, I think it's the ultimate Maple Leafs troll move, right? I mean, like he goes to Boston for free, and you got the Leafs giving up a first rounder for it's a very decent trade on themselves, but it's the ultimate Maple Leafs troll move. This guy gets to go to Boston for free, and now you guys, you got to play him in the playoffs or whatever, right? I mean, it's going to be it's a
Yeah, because I saw that Zoom call of Taylor Hall, and I mean, the guy looked visibly frustrated, down. I think it's been a roller coaster 2 years. I mean, if people forget that 2 years ago he was the MVP of this league. And he went from Arizona to Buffalo. I mean, even people were surprised, because why would he choose a 1 year deal with Buffalo? Clearly, he was trying to set himself up for the next contract. And he thought, oh, I'll go to Buffalo. I'll probably be on their top line, getting all the points and all the shine alongside Jack Eichel. And it hasn't worked out. Yeah, but I mean, 2 goals, 17 points. I mean, it doesn't necessarily fetch a return either. I mean, um, I don't know who's had a more disappointing season, him or Sam Bennett, but the yeah, no, that was another big move. Any other moves that piqued your interest, Sujeevan?
Um, no, I don't. I wouldn't say anything else. I think Florida made a couple of good moves that
What about the
helped them
Manta
out.
trade?
Oh, I think Stevie Y got a highway
Steve
robbery
Eiserman,
there. Stevie
Steve Eis,
Y just
like he robbed the Capitals. I don't know what the Capitals were thinking, but like when you asked that question, I was thinking of good trades for like teams that like are competing and trying to get something out of it. But
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what the
So I
Capitals
guess
did. They
I
gave
guess you could call them the one of the losers, your losers in
They
this
are the
trade.
losers of this. Capitals are the losers of this. You gave up Verana, you gave up Panic, you gave up a first and a second for one guy who gets you what 40 points in a season, who's going to be on your second line.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
if you're
I didn't
saying that,
understand it.
like, if you're going to give that much, why don't you just offer that for Taylor Hall?
I thought Verona is just as good as Anthony Manta. I
I
mean,
think
I don't.
Verana's better. It's
well,
just
it's
he's
a cap issue too, right? And Verona is going to be, I believe he's the UFA, so I think they're predicting that he's going to ask for a lot more money and they can't afford him to fit under their cap as well. Whereas with Mantha, I think they can work around the cap flexibility. And that's why Panic was thrown in. And I think they needed to just toss in those picks to even sweeten the deal to get a Mantha back in return. But
Manta's making what 5 million,
I think it's
5.7
just over
million.
5 million. But I
Yeah,
think
for the
they're
next
predicting Verona to
year.
make a little around that too. So I don't know. It's a questionable move, but Stevie Y pulled it out. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
give him
I don't
credit
know.
for
Stevie
that
Y is
move.
a genius for that.
Yeah, no, I'll actually, to continue on that same theme. So, losers of this deadline, and I hate to say the word loser, because I mean, you don't know what will happen, regarding a trade. It could be the most terrible trade today, but it could actually lead to a really like promising play later on. But for me, the Jets I thought were really disappointing in the NHL. I mean, you're talking about a team that has a really good group of forwards, one of the leagues, if not the league's best goalie. They just needed a decent D man, and all they get is Jordy Ben. They missed out on Savard, whom Julian Brisebois got for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, I mean, that to me, I thought was a very disappointing return for the Jets, who I don't know how many cracks they have, because at some point, if they don't progress further in the playoffs, I mean, I don't know if this core would necessarily lasts. So, yeah. What about you, Chris? Anybody you saw who either did not do as much as they should have?
I'll give you one guess as the team that I'll talk about, and it's the Avalanche. And were they winners or losers? And I honestly, I don't know. Like, so for a team that wants to be making a deep run, they did get up some depth acquisitions. Devin Dubnyk at the goalie role, Nemeth at the defense, and Soderberg on center. And these are all great depth roles. They're all respectable. They didn't lose any roster positions in acquiring all those things. I guess you could call them winners in that sense. You know, they developed that depth, but at the same time, I mean, with all those other big fish out there, the Tyler Hall, the Foligno, um,
Felino.
Foligno that went to the Maple Leafs. I mean, you could call them losers and not being able to acquire those big fish. So, for a team that wants to make that big deep run, are they winners? Are they losers? I am torn. I'm not able to put them into a definitive camp in that set. I'm curious what the rest of you might think about that.
I don't know either. I mean, I know that Vegas has they always have a well structured team. They're very tough to beat in the playoffs. They were favorites, not favorites, but they were one of the more favorite teams. Obviously, your team. I had said you guys were going to win the Stanley Cup before the season even started. Um, I Sujeevan or
I say
Sandy.
that every year.
What about Sajeevan? I remember Sajeevan or Sunny. One of you two also said Avalanche as well, right?
No. I said the Leafs are winning the cup.
Oh yeah,
Let's not forget that. Okay.
yeah.
And I'm sticking with that. I'm still sticking to that.
Then I think it was Sandeep who
I
said,
think
right?
it's
It was
Sandeep that
Avs.
had the Avs.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
said Avs and Lightning. I forgot who. I think I said the Avs might win it, but
Yeah, I don't trust me. Don't worry. I thought the Flames were gonna be the best team out of Canada, and I was clearly wrong on that one.
Clearly.
Yeah, yeah. There was that was another team, by the way. I mean, it's funny. They were actually managed to get a pretty good haul for Sam Bennett. I mean, considering this is a guy who clearly wasn't having a great year. But yeah, no, let's talk about
I
oh
think,
wait,
sorry, before you move on, I think another team that needs to be mentioned that is a clear out loser is the Oilers. They needed a top line forward to go with McDavid or Draisaitl. They did not dress it, and I think they definitely come out as a loser in this
losing.
in this case as
What
well.
about so I don't think I also got the Sandeep either. Do you have any particular team that you can think of?
team that needed to address something. I think I would definitely put the Jets up there. Uh, I don't know. I think see the thing with the Lightning is I think the Lightning have enough, and I think they could have added a forward. I think that's a need that they could have done. Just a depth forward that fits into the third or fourth line. Um, I mean, just given Stamkos too. I know I love Stamkos, but he's very injury prone as well, and I think it's something that could impact them if they're trying to make a deep playoff run. But to me, I felt like the Lightning could have done more. They did a great move by adding depth with Savard, but I would say the Lightning, and I was expecting, like you said, Lloyd, more from the Jets. I think this is a team that's kind of like always on the edge, but can never push past that to get to that next level. And I think it's going to bite them. It's going to bite Paul Maurice, most importantly, because
Yeah.
he's running out of luck and turns in terms of making this team a
Mhm.
success.
Well, let's as for winners, I'm gonna guess it's gonna be like two Leafs fans here who's gonna say the Leafs on this one. So I'm
Is
gonna
there
No,
just
anyone else
no.
that won? The Leafs
uh,
won the Leafs won the trade deadline.
I knew.
You added Nick Foligno, you added Rich, you added Hutton, and let's not forget we have Riley Nash as well, who will come in the playoffs. So you've added four top players, and when we didn't have enough space in the salary cap.
Mhm.
So you're
Yeah, but
telling
it's the
like you've added four strong depth players that can push us to the next level.
I'm gonna go a
yeah.
little different. Instead of giving the typical Leafs one, I'm gonna actually say it was prior to the deadline. I'd give it to Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders. I
Yes,
think they
sir.
did some really good moves by adding some veteran
Zajac,
experience in
Palmieri.
Zajac and Palmieri. I think obviously it's too early to tell. It's only been a couple games, but I think it's gonna really matter when it's playoff time and you need those types of guys to put the puck in the net, grind it out on the forecheck, deliver those hits. And Palmieri is that guy. And that was one name I wish the Leafs really looked into. But I'm not complaining on Felino, but I would say Islanders is my pick.
Well, he had to
Hmm.
address Anders Lee's injury, right? So
Exactly.
he just
Yeah,
cancels it out.
definitely. And I would Chris Greenway, anybody for winner? I know you said
Yeah,
Abs is bold potentially, but
yeah.
anybody as a winner for you?
Yeah, well, I think sometimes it's not about the moves you make, but it's about the moves you don't make. And there's a lot of, that panic trade deadline buying. Sometimes you end up with things that don't pan out. You sacrifice a first round pick for someone like Flamingo or for that to the Leafs that doesn't pan out. And sometimes it's best to just keep that first round pick that the Avalanche have done. And so that kind of puts me towards the Avalanche in the winter camp and completely unbiased assessment in doing so.
That's like, well, for me, I have to say, like, I like the. I can't believe I'm actually saying this. I have to actually say this, but the Leafs, to me, even though they overpaid for Folino, I think that they did really well in this trade deadline by adding him, because I think that they've lacked that grit that they've had every playoff series they go up against Boston and they just get bullied. And I think like this is the first time out there getting a, and even last year against Columbus, Folino just ran roughshod on the Leafs. I think this time around with Thornton, with Wayne Simmons, with all these veteran guys on the team, but and now adding Folino, I think that is huge. And he knows the situation. I think you could see that he understood that, hey, like 18 years ago my dad was playing for the Leafs. He was out there scoring big goals in the playoffs, so I think he understands that, and he understands that there's this connection, and he's looking forward to it. I could see that in his face when he was talking about his trade. I But for me, I have to agree with Sandeep. I think the biggest non-biased answer would definitely be the Islanders. I mean,
Well, you don't have bias. You're an LA fan,
uh,
so
yeah, no, my opinion doesn't matter anymore. We're back to basement dwellers. It's all good. Well, that's those were the moves. Well, I'll ask you guys for your. Do you think anybody has changed in your picks for the Stanley Cup?
Put the Leafs in there
good.
now. I'm just kidding.
I'm still
I mean,
saying they're winning.
it's really hard to assess the Leafs. I think I love Campbell to Sujeevan's point, but I think if you have Freddie available come playoff time, I think that really pushes them as the clear cut favorites. I'd love to see a Leafs and Avs one. That would be great. Kaji facing his former team. Hopefully he knocks one of our guys and gets suspended for the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'll take that. But
I think he'll do it
uh,
in the first round.
fingers crossed. I mean, if I'm gonna change my picks, I'll keep the Avs the same, but I'd love to see the Leafs slot in there instead of the Lightning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely, I'll be looking forward to seeing these playoffs and whatnot. But yeah, no, thanks for having you guys on. Thank you, Chris, for coming on as well. Um, this is the wrap for the podcast, and Thank you guys for tuning in. Do give a like, do give a subscribe, and do give us also a listen on Spotify. Thank you, and have yourself a good night. Good night, guys.
Later.